Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining this session. My name is Pei-Hsuan, and this work was done with me and my students from the university in the southern part of Taiwan. And today I will present our study on the mediating effect of cloud computing characteristics on ebook interactivity and user experience. Let me start with some background. Cloud computing, as defined by the National Institute of Standards and Technologies, gives users ubiquitous, convenient, on-demand access to a shared pool of computing resources. Companies like Amazon, Google, Microsoft have built entire industries around this model, and it's characterized by high elasticity, service orientation, strong fault tolerance, ease of use, reliance on standard protocol like TCP/IP, high security, and virtualization. At the same time, the ebook market is growing quickly, about 9% annually, and is projected to reach over 200 billion US dollars by 2034. Cloud-based infrastructure supports cross-device synchronization, scalable storage, and then real-time content delivery, which together enhance digital reading accessibility and interactivity, and are reshaping the entire publishing value chain, from content creation and editing to distribution and reader analytics. So, as ebooks become more interactive, what are the role of cloud infrastructure different characteristics playing and influencing user experiences? As interactive technologies developed, user-centered design and interface usability, things like flexible navigation, efficient content search, become central to how people evaluate the digital products. At the same time, cloud computing infrastructures, readiness, and connectivity conditions directly influence whether cloud-based services are feasible and get adopted in the first place. In the current literature, there is a gap between interface design and cloud computing infrastructures. They tend to get studied separately, and these studies intend to close that gap. As we know, that positive user experiences drive greater customer retention and sustain usage intention, and it is closely tied to satisfactions and loyalty. Positive user experiences also enhance higher level of learning engagement and personalized experiences. So, what roles does the underlying cloud infrastructure play in shaping the user experiences of interactive ebook? And then can we actually measure that role statistically? And here we define interactive ebook as a reading content displaying go beyond text on a screen by providing features through cloud-based digital publishing, dynamic content updates, a mobile-friendly interface, and collaborative functionalities. In this studies, the mediating role of cloud computing characteristics was examined in the design of interactive ebook interfaces and further analyzed how these interactive features affect user experiences. In other words, we are not just asking whether interactivity improves users' experience. We're asking whether the cloud infrastructure behind that interactivity matters too, and how much of that effect is actually experienced. That distinction is really the core contribution of these studies. This is our research model. On the left, we have ebook interactivity features, INF, broken into 4 dimensions: choice or selectivity, participation, responsiveness, and playfulness. On the right is user experience, UX, measured through behavioral intention, satisfactions, and then preferences. Sitting between them is cloud computing characteristics, CCC, covering connectivity, processing capability, and storage capability. We hypothesize H1 that ebook interactivity functions have a positive effect on users' behavioral intention, satisfactions, and preferences, showing here as a H1-1 through H1-3. Then for H2, we propose 3 sub-hypotheses: connectivity, processing capability, and storage capability of cloud computing, each positively affect the user experience generated by the ebook interactivity feature. Simply, we are testing whether cloud computing characteristics mediating the relationship between interactivities and user experiences, not just whether interactivity matters on its own. If that mediation holds, and it means design team needs to think about the back-end infrastructure, not only the front-end interaction design. To ground this in a real context, we use the SyncMagic ebook platform developed by the Hamastar technology, the content focusing on dementia. As the Alzheimer's Association defines it. Dementia is a general term for the loss of memory, language, problem solving, and other thinking abilities severe enough to interfere their daily life. The Alzheimer's is its most common cause. And this ebook is a part of a nursing program training courses at a hospital in the southern part of Taiwan. So the content itself carries real educational weight, not just a demo. We invited two groups of participants. One group had experience purchasing or reading ebook and completed an anonymous online questionnaire distributed over 6 months. And then the other group consisted of medical care service providers, people who support patients and families affected by dementia, whether through caregiving, health education, advocacy, or training volunteers. Across both the quantitative and the qualitative components, we focus on four interactive features: choice, participations, responsiveness, and the playfulness, intended to enhance engagement and enjoyment and in turn shape the overall user experiences. The method we adopted in the studies was mixed method. One was the qualitative work we did to refine the ebook design, and the quantitative survey was used to test our hypothesis. For the qualitative method, we first use the think aloud protocol, and this method lets participants verbalize what they are looking at, thinking, doing, and feeling while using the ebook, and their behaviors and the verbal expressions were recorded on video and audio. It is widely adopted method in the usability and HCI research because it lets researchers capture users' cognitive processes in real time rather than relying on retrospective self-report. Each of the five dementia experts we invited spent roughly about 10 to 15 minutes and using the think aloud method. And through this recording, and we gain direct insight into how participants perceive the ebook's interactive features and identify areas for improvement. And we use that insight to revise the ebook design before we move into the next phase of the study. And we then adopted the observation method to measure the time they could find different features when used the upgraded the newer version of the ebook. For the quantitative method, we collected 234 valid responses and 130 women, 103 men, and one participant who preferred not to disclose gender. And 9 additional responses were excluded for failing an attention check. So most respondents between 30 to 35 years old, and with 90 in that group, 56 age 36 to 40, 32 age 41 to 45, and then 56 above age of 46, including one participant over 70 years old. And this gave us a reasonable broad age range to examine how ebook interactivity and the cloud characteristics relate to user experiences across different life stages. Before testing our hypothesis, we check the psychometric properties of the instruments and the overall reliability of the questionnaires. It was 0.955, very high, and every construct and subconstruct exceeded 0.7 threshold, except user experience behavioral intention. Subscales is at 0.649, which is still considered acceptable. And scoreness value range from negative 1.292 to negative 0.229, and the Curtis range from negative 0.780 to 1.926, both well within acceptable bounds for univariate normality. So going into the structural model, we will confine the data met the statistical assumption required. And you can see table 4, table 5, and table 6 are the statistical outcome. As a result, both H1 and H2 were supported. Ebook interactivity significantly influenced user experiences directly with a standardized path coefficient 0.699 and a z-value is 16882 and the p less than 0.001 is as a strong direct effect. And more importantly, for our research questions, the mediating effect of cloud computing characteristics was also significant. The beta equals 0.098 with a 95% confidence interval of 0.037 to 0.159. In other words, part of the effect of interactivity on user experiences runs through the cloud computing characteristics, connectivity, processing capability, and storage capability, not just through the interactive features themselves. Model fit was marginal on a couple of indices, RMCEA and the CFI in particular, but the core theoretical relationship held up clearly, and the indirect path remained significant. Practically, this tells us that a well-designed interactive features alone isn't enough. The infrastructure behind it, and how fast it responds, and how reliable it connects, and how much it can store, better shape whether that interactivity actually translates into a better user experiences for the reader. As mentioned before, we had two groups of 5 participants each, and the first group, the pseudocoded A through E, used the Thinking Aloud protocol to give us revision suggestions for the ebook. And the second group, F through J, read the revised ebook and were observed again. A structural list of 19 observation items. The most participants were retired professionals with expertise in dementia care, many volunteering with the Zealandia Dementia Association in Tainan. This is in the southern part of Taiwan. And 9 of the 10 held at least a college degree. And the one comment from the participant D captures a recurring thing. They said, when clicking on explanatory image, the pop-up content was entirely in English, and having Chinese explanations alongside it would have made it much easier to understand. The comments like this and about choice, responsiveness, participations, and playfulness directly shape how we revise the ebook before the second round of testing. After incorporating all the feedback from the first group of participants, and we ran the second round of observation, and 3 key findings emerged. First, the operational fluency of the ebook interactive features had clearly improved, even though a few connectivity issues remain. Second, the interactive functions met users' expectation, but people still needed a bit of time to figure out how to operate them, suggesting a need for clear onboarding or instructions. Third, the interactive features effectively engage users with the content and spark their interest in learning more about dementia, which, given the health education goal of this ebook, is a genuinely encouraging result. On average, a participant took about 56.4 seconds to complete all 19 observation items. Overall, this study bridged the gap between the technological design of ebook interactive features and HCI research on user experience. Our mixed method design, combining structural equation modeling with the think aloud and observation data, strengthens the theoretical model and shows how qualitative insight can directly inform the hypothesis testing and model refinement in SEM research. Theoretically, we think the cloud computing capabilities underneath interactive features, especially as they are increasingly enhanced by the AI, deserve more attention in the literature on digital services and new service design. And it's not enough to study the interface alone. The infrastructure behind it matters too, and our results give some empirical support for that claim. Practically, 2 things stand out. First, even though most interactions in this ebook are simple click and browsing, there is still room to further simplify the interaction process so users don't need extra learning. Second, given how limited screen space is on mobile devices, how information is presented, and how easily users can find what they want to read remain a critical design issue for future versions. Thank you very much for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.